We don't mean to make light of getting permits because we take it very seriously. And it's not something that's optional, it's something that's required when you're doing construction. However, there are some builders and homeowners out there who may not feel that permits are necessary, or they might make just assumptions about that a certain project doesn't require a permit, and sometimes we understand that people make honest mistakes as well. But it's always best to ask before you start a project if you're not sure. We're here to help, and you can call Development Services and Inspections anytime. Today we want to walk you through the many benefits of working with licensed builders and obtaining permits, and the downside of not doing that. We want to help you make this decision an easy one for you. So what do you think the main reasons are for people not wanting to get permits? We think it's related to Big Ben and Mr. Franklin. Time and money. Construction projects never seem to have enough of either one, and the two are closely related. We understand that, and we've been doing our best on the customer service side the last few years to address these concerns. Let's talk about time for a moment. We've made process improvements in development services by adding staff, by improving our website, by process improvements, workflow, how we handle permits. And this graph shows changes in permitting performance over the last 3 years. The blue bars and the blue axis on the left side represent the average monthly residential permit approval time. And the blue dashed line that's trending downward to the left, that is showing decreasing approval times over that 3-year period. It started on the left side at about 19 days, and it's down around 11 days now. So that's an improvement we've made. And that's average. That doesn't mean every permit gets approved in 11 days. But this is a big picture trend. The red kind of jagged line represents essentially the percentage of time that we're meeting the goal of how quickly we take action on permits, whether we get back to applicants and say there are changes you need to make, or whether we issue a permit. And that long-term dashed trend line is going upward to the left. And that essentially shows that we've improved from about 59% of the time hitting our goals to the high 90s. So that's also a very positive improvement. And of course, those two are closely related. So we're trying to show that the time argument for getting permits is becoming harder to make. This graph shows the cost of permits, and we've taken a few typical types of permits. New single-family home, average over the last fiscal year about $5,400. Additions about $1,200. Remodels about $850, and a deck about $450. In the context of overall costs for construction projects, these fees would represent a fairly small portion of the cost. Let's talk about a few tips for faster permits. And these may seem obvious, but when someone's got a construction project in mind, some of these steps would be easy to overlook. Plan ahead for your project. Allow time for permitting. Ask questions in advance. Call us up in Development Services and ask us any questions you may have about your project, or meet with us and discuss your project. Review permitting requirements. Also submit complete applications. That's important. It just makes things go smoother, and there's less back and forth between staff and applicants when they do that. Provide timely responses to staff when we make comments on your application, and also work collaboratively with staff. We're here to help, and that just makes everything work better when applicants do that. So I'm going to let Chelsea take it over now.
Let's talk about those not so hidden benefits of permits. So let's think about all the details that go into a construction project. It's not just cosmetic things, what your tile's going to look like. It also includes the systems, so your plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and structural systems. But then there's also site considerations. So things like drainage and the height and the setbacks and access to streets and even utilities. All of that plays in working together to make sure that we can have a positive effect on safety, protecting home value, insurance, and real estate transactions. Let's talk about safety. Now, everybody wants to have a house that is safe for their family, but also everybody also wants a safe neighborhood, and we strive to get that. Permits give us peace of mind in knowing that all of those systems that I just talked about, the building, electrical, mechanical, and structural systems, are properly designed, properly installed, and properly inspected. And then we know that your houses are not built in floodplains or too close to the property lines. All right, value. So homes are our largest investment. That's what we put the biggest chunk of change into as adults. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the value of our homes. And that is done by regular upkeep and also maintenance of our home. And we all have to do that when we buy a house. But the main part of ensuring that we make sure that that value is maintained is making sure that the house is built right in the first place. And so we can do that by having permits and inspections and making sure that certificates of occupancies are issued for those houses. So insurance. So we want to make sure that when we get insurance that it is viable. So we don't end up in a situation where we are in the middle of a claim and our insurance company alerts us to the fact that maybe our attic in this one did not have a permit and now the tree has fallen on it. Or some of the work that was done by our electrician over on the side on the weekend caused this fire. Or maybe we had a pipe that burst and flooded the house. We don't want to be caught in a situation where we're making a claim and that insurance company that we spent a whole bunch of money on tells us, oh, we can't cover your insurance claim because it's not permitted and it wasn't built to code. I'm going to let Jeff come up right now and talk some about this. We encounter it a lot, and as a builder, I think he's got some experience that he'd like to share.
I only have one slide, but it's got 4 pictures, and it kind of shows the process of how I get involved in this. And the lower slide here just shows the realtor with a client going through a house that's on the market, and everyone's enjoying it, and finally goes under contract. And then the house inspector comes in and looks at it during due diligence. And then you have a situation where you go through full disclosure, and then you find out that there's been renovations, there's been repairs, maybe even an addition, a bathroom, structural work done, such as a deck, a screened-in porch, and it hasn't been permitted. And the phone call I get, because I'm a general contractor, is I want you to come over here and look at this and see what you can do for me. And the answer is, I can't do anything for you. Just because I'm a general contractor and I have a good relationship with you, I can't pull a permit out of the air. And the situation over the years has kind of developed to a pretty hardcore answer that if you want to have it inspected, then you're going to end up exposing what's been done so it can be inspected. And as Phil's earlier slide shows, building permits aren't very expensive. They may take a little while to get. I've seen that improve over the years, but they are very, very inexpensive as far as the relationship of tearing something down and putting it back together, with the delay that it causes, with the just disruption in your life. I've had 2 recent situations where I was called in, and they had moved load-bearing walls, they had put in HVAC, they had put in plumbing. They've done a terrific job, and now they want to sell it 2 years later, but they didn't have any permits. And where this is driven, that you don't need a permit, I just haven't ever really been able to put my finger on who's saying don't get a permit. Is it just the owner says, no, I'm not going to go through the hassle of getting a permit, or is it subcontractors that are willing to work telling people that they don't need permits? But the bottom line is a permit assures you of a very safe, valuable, easy to sell property. And that's the reason that permits are important. You have an opportunity to have 4 professionals come by and inspect the work. You have the opportunity, if you're doing an addition, the inspector's going to come by and look at the footings. The inspector's going to come by and look at the foundation. He's going to come by and look at the framing. You're going to have the electrical inspector that comes by, looks at the rough end on the electrical, looks at the final on the electrical. You're going to have the same thing happen for your HVAC and your plumbing, and then you're going to have a final building inspection. So these are valuable tools for very little money to have these people, trained professional, many of them with years and years of experience, to look at what has been done and stamp it as correct, and or correct according to the local code. So the cost of a permit is nowhere near its value in the end. So I would urge everyone in the building business and in the realtor business, or anyone that has a friend that's getting ready to do a renovation, call the Department of Building Inspections and find out what the process is, because it is going to make your property more valuable, make the process easy. When you go under full disclosure and go to sell, you're not going to have this problem. And more jurisdictions are on a hard line of making you expose the work.
Thank you, Jeff. This is just a quick story I wanted to tell about someone that came into the planning department with this beautiful landscaping work he had done on his property, a water feature, decking, a gazebo. And he came in and he said, I have to own up to this. I found out I did this work without permits, and I want to fix it. I want to fix it because at such time when I go to sell my property, I know this has got to be sorted out, and I want to take care of it now. I said, great idea. So we started looking at it, and he built it in the setback of his property. So he said, you're going to have to get a variance from the Board of Adjustment for that. After he submitted his variance application, we found out he was also in a Duke Energy easement and an OWASA easement. And so that's pretty much, his application is pretty much ground to a halt. He'll probably have to withdraw it because the Chapel Hill Board of Adjustment can't give variances in someone else's utility easements. So this is just an illustration of it's not good to make assumptions when you're doing a construction project and just say, oh, that permits aren't going to be, or make assumptions like where your property line is. We see this all the time, that people just miscalculate, and just a story there for you. And I think Chelsea's got a story or two now herself.
I do have stories, all kinds of stories. I'm just going to share 2 with you. Here are some examples of projects gone wrong for whatever reasons. This one in particular was one that came up in the past few, I guess maybe a month and a half ago. So a young lady bought a house. The attic was unfinished, and she says, well, let me go ahead and close off that attic. So we didn't get a phone call. I guess she hired a contractor to do it. And so now we got a call and a complaint that there was probably some work happening in this house. When we went in, this was the stage at which it was. The attic was sheetrocked. There was also a set of stairs on the outside of the house to go up to this new living space. So the set of stairs were in the setback, so they have to be removed. The property is in a location that cannot have an accessory dwelling unit, so now that whole place has to be completely undone. So she's in that process right now. I have no idea how many thousands of dollars that she spent already, but sheetrock had to come out, insulation had to come out, electrical, mechanical, all that stuff had to come out. She had tubs in and all kinds of fixtures in and stuff. So that's what happens when we don't get a phone call to just find out what's going on, and that crossed over planning and inspections. I had another one that was it was sad to me, but this lady bought a condo, and she was trying to get in so she can get her grandkids to come over, so she would have an accessible place for them to come. She wanted hardwood floors. So inside of her condo is a commercial building. There was a parking deck up underneath the bottom. And she hired an unlicensed contractor. And he told her, oh yeah, I can put the hardwood floors down, but in order to make sure everything's level, I'm probably going to have to take up this concrete. So he jackhammered all the concrete in her unit. Come to find out that concrete was there because it was a 2-hour fire barrier between the parking garage below and her unit. So now she has to get all that concrete poured back into an existing unit in order for her to move in. She's been out of the unit for 3 months now. It's really, so we run into these situations. So it's always better to call us, at least check, at least say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think a permit is necessary? It's always better to be on the safe side. These are some just quick notes for building permits. So these are thresholds. Anytime you are doing any changes to the plumbing, electrical, or mechanical systems, so I am putting a new bathroom in the basement, I'm moving my shower from one side of the bathroom to the other, I'm doing whatever it is, a permit is required. I put an example here about a sealed crawl space because people think they don't need a permit for a sealed crawl space. However, a permit is needed for a sealed crawl space because that affects the envelope of the house, which therefore affects the breathability, I'm going to say, of that crawl space area. So you have taken vents from the outside on the foundation and closed them up. So now your crawl space cannot breathe. How are you going to get it to breathe? You're going to turn a duct down into it. You're going to get a dehumidifier, whatever. That extends the mechanical system, and that requires a permit. Any structural work, so you're putting in beams, you're moving windows, doors, whatever, putting in new walls. Structural work requires a permit. And then the new general statute changes as of a couple years ago, October, non-cosmetic work in excess of $15,000 requires a permit. So if you're changing windows out and they're the same size, maybe not. But if you are doing anything else that is in excess of $15,000, as a combination of that project, you're required to get a permit. And Phil's going to talk about the zoning thresholds.
Thanks. And the other side of the permitting equation, of course, is zoning, things that go on the property. Typically, anything that happens that involves site disturbance or work in special zones such as the historic district, neighborhood conservation district, resource conservation district, and so forth, it's going to require a zoning permit. You can get what's called a minor zoning compliance permit, which are typically approved in a day, and that's for projects that are less than 500 square feet of impervious surface, less than 1,500 square feet of land disturbance, and some examples would be patios, decks, and small additions. In summary, we believe the key drivers of people not getting permits, aside from just making assumptions and not knowing, is time and money considerations. But we believe the benefits far outweigh the costs if you consider the safety considerations of your property, protecting the value of your home. So when you make improvements, they're permitted and you can actually claim them when you go to sell your home. The viability of your insurance, so if something unfortunate happens, your insurance is actually going to cover you. And also having smooth real estate transactions. As most people know, that's a stressful process going through due diligence. It can be, and making that as smooth as possible is definitely something that anyone would want to shoot for.
We hope that this information has been helpful and that you understand that the benefits getting permits outweigh the cost of not getting permits. Jeff, you had something to say?
Yeah, Chelsea, could you comment on the availability of standalone permits?
Sure. So we do have different types of permits. So we're talking today about residential building permits. However, we do have standalone sub-permits is what we call them. But they are permits that cover, like Jeff said, mechanical systems. So you're replacing your HVAC system or the ductwork in your crawl space. We've got plumbing permits. So you're you want to put in a new bathroom, you can come, well, not a new bathroom, you could put in a new fixture in your bathroom. You want to put a new, I don't know, toilet or bathtub or whatever it is. If you're just changing out that fixture, you don't have to have a permit, but if you're moving things, you can get a standalone sub-permit. I want new lights in my kitchen, new string of lights down the, recessed lights down the hallway. I mean, you can come and get an electrical permit and get that. We do those permits in 24 to 48 hours max. They're very inexpensive. We just want to make sure that the permits are coming in and we're able to take a look at them to make sure that things are installed safely. All right, so these are our this is our contact information. So this is where I can be reached, and Sharnika, who's the permit technician, and this is where Phil and the zoning people can be reached when you need permits for things that are happening on the outside of your house. And then this is the website. So a lot of the questions are, where can I find a reputable builder? So there is an association that has builders. So the Home Builders Association is a resource that we use. We can't recommend builders, but they are a resource. You can find a pro, and that link will take you to the Builders Association of Durham, Orange, and Chatham counties.